it's a long season. We're in round 4. We just finished round 4, and we have 16 more to go. So that's a mentality we have, and we're looking forward to it. Even though it hasn't been the ideal season that we wanted right now, I know we're excited for the opportunity that we have ahead.
That's Jace Howard, the Michigan basketball team. Welcome in, Maize and Blue Review, Afternoon Live, joined by Brandon Justice, the senior editor here at TMBR. And Brandon, it's great to see you. How are you?
Good to see you too. I'm doing pretty well on this Tuesday. Feels a lot like a Monday, but it's a Tuesday. How are you doing?
I'm good. I don't know if I would have predicted that I'd be playing Jace Howard sound, this, here in January, but here we are. I also wouldn't have predicted that, he'd have been guarding Kofi Coburn, matching up with him with a mask on Friday. But, we'll get to, some Michigan basketball. We'll talk about Jim Harbaugh. That it's just another day, and yet, it seemed like a lot of people were getting more squirrely over the last 24 hours about Harbaugh here. And, maybe, and I don't know about a good reason, but with reason,
right.
At least day 17. Of course, a big recruiting weekend that we'll touch on, and, some NFL games of interest here as well that I want to ask you about. Well, let's start with the basketball team. Here they are, and I think most people have at least have adjusted their outlook and have just looked at the rest of the season here, what can they do to just show some improvement? And, that's where the bar's at for me, and I think most people. I mean, how are you looking at it?
Yeah, I think that really what you're waiting for here is, can they finally get a clean bill of health, and can they find a rhythm? Because, look, I mean, in the beginning of the season and even into winter break, the team was underperforming by all accounts, and you can't really shy away from the fact that they haven't played as well as they've been expected to. That's a reality. What really has been unfair to them, I think, is just kind of the circumstances they've had to go through. Was they had a real rough start, and how do you overcome a rough start? Well, you go into Big Ten play and try to turn things around, but they weren't even able to do that because of the injury report, COVID or not. So with all that in mind, I think Michigan is just hoping, I think that's all really they can do with any of us.
Yeah, that's right. You froze up there for a second, but you're right. Your point. That's all we can do is hope. That, and that's the thing. Heading into this game tonight, you didn't have Hunter Dickinson, the All-American, on Friday. You didn't have Brandon Johns, Jr., the senior. Hoping those guys are going to be available here tonight, and we'll find out what's going to go on with Maryland, a team that in Michigan, if you look, they are currently favored by 6.5 points. I better text Brandon. He might just be talking away right here, saying, making some great points and everything, and not knowing that he has frozen up or not. And I think that he did figure that out, because he's just dropped off. So we'll see. We'll get Brandon back here to talk a little bit about the Michigan game tonight. If you did not know that after Michigan plays basketball or football games, so we'll do a post game right here. So you want some immediate reaction to the game, just fire it up here on YouTube. We'll be here, TMBR, and we'll talk with you. Brandon, you left off. You were talking about, it's unpredictable when it came down to testing and everything else with this team. I was adding on, or as I was thinking about, what you were saying there. I just saw today that the NHL announced that they're not going to be testing asymptomatic players anymore, and I know there's a lot of people looking this past weekend in the NFL and the wild card weekend. Previously, I don't know, half dozen players, all kinds of players were missing games and being held out, but nobody, when it came to wild card weekend. So maybe the NFL, without saying it, relax their standards, and maybe that's what's going to happen here in college basketball sooner or later. But I don't know. I do think that these leagues, of course, I mean, they're looking at what the other leagues are doing, and everybody's trying to do the best they can here. But that could be a situation where you may not be testing the players as much if they follow the lead of the pros.
Yeah, and at this point, it probably is going to end up that way in most leagues, I would assume, just given how long it's been that we've been, managing life with this virus in mind. So, it's just one of those things where things have gotten out of control here over the past couple of weeks and over the past month, really, in all sports. And ironically enough, the playoff was for the most part unaffected in the NFL and in the NCAA. And then we're seeing the same thing here over the last week. I would say there's been a lot less players out in every league. So you do wonder if the leagues are going to relax on that, which it's interesting. The whole thing is wildly interesting. We really don't know. Everything is speculation, I think, at this point. And so,
Sure.
with that in mind, like basically the point I was trying to make in on Michigan side of things is everyone's dealing with this, right? So it's not this guy or the next guy, but Michigan had some real rough timing because you had high expectations, you performed well under them, and then you have an opportunity still with conference play to really, turn things around, and that gets completely derailed by, COVID. And granted, everyone was affected by it. However, in Michigan's case, they that was the most pivotal point of their season. Like they had to start off Big Ten play in a big way, and unfortunately, they go play Illinois. A very emotional game, as we know it was going to be and has been for months now talked about. And they don't even have their best player available, and they're missing two bigs in a game against a team entirely, built on the bigs. So you really obviously for reasons greater than sports, you hope this whole thing gets figured out and you hope that things continue to get better. But especially in Michigan's case right now, the basketball team needing to get into a rhythm is so hard when you don't know who's going to show up to practice, not because they don't want to come, because they can't, right? And then you talk about the games and playing the games. It's hard to go into a game with strategy as a coach when you don't know what you're going to be working with.
Yeah, you also know how difficult it is, like you see just in sports and when you come down with your rivals and, sometimes your rivals makes charges and you have to say, well, do they have any point here? But of course, you go back to the football team last year and now you see what Michigan State fans are saying about, Michigan canceling, conveniently, or what they were saying about Hunter Dickinson. I mean, so you always have to say, well, do they have a point here? And when it comes down to COVID, I'm like, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to the coaches and the administration that, what, they're doing the best to make their team and put them in, the best position they can health wise. I mean, that's going to be
right.
Number one. And I put all the rivalry stuff over here, but, it sure is, people are still, coming up with their own theories when it comes down to, right. To Michigan and really the whole, the whole athletic department and how they deal with it, whether it's, whether they have a point or not. And mostly I don't think they do.
No, I mean, like I said, I think this whole thing is what it is. I mean, we're all dealing with it, and there's only a small percentage of us that are on Earth. I mean, that are experts in anything like this. So, it seems like there's a bigger percentage of people out there who know nowadays, but I won't dive into that. So,
the sports talk people, I didn't know how many experts. There are a ton of experts when it comes to the sports talk field on this. I didn't realize there were so many.
It's something else, man. But I mean, look, Michigan's they're desperate for a clean bill right now. Like they're just to go into a game with your full roster right now is like unheard of, seemingly. And I think Michigan is just holding on to that happening. And until it does, it's not going to be able to catch a rhythm. Even if it finds a rhythm, let's say, honestly, I have no idea what the roster is going to look like tonight in full confidence, I should say. Even if they have one or two players missing and they win tonight, and then they win their next game and they win their next game, they're still going to have to bring in whoever was missing in those games and then find a rhythm. And then you have a worse problem because you're like, can I get this guy in? Can I not get this guy in? So you really hope that for their sake tonight, they have that full availability or close to it. And they're able to actually scheme up what they spent months scheming up together in the coaches' offices during the offseason, because it's unheard of to deal with the things that everyone's dealing with right now, in not only in coaching and sports, but everywhere. And so I just think that we can't really put a true definition on the season until we see a large enough sample size with this team settled in and in a rhythm. And who knows if that happens at all this season, because we're nearing February as it is. So it's just one of those things, man, where it's like, do you almost want to put an asterisk on the first few weeks of the season?
Yeah, I think you could put a little one there, and yet because of the preseason expectation and where they are at, even before they missed some of these games. I guess I'd go back to Michigan State. You would look, and this was the trajectory definitely was below expectations. But I look at it like this. I mean, that's just to me the way I look at it. But I looked at Juwan Howard's first year as a good to very good year, and I put last year's as however you want to put terrific. It was one of the best seasons that. Enjoyable wise, I mean, it couldn't have been any more enjoyable, than last year. I guess maybe if they made the Final Four, but I mean, it was an awesome year. So I go to, if I had the grades, A, 2 A's. So, can you, get a C or below, and work the asterisk in there even where it's at right now? I mean, yeah. I mean, you get it. You can't go if you come up with a C or worse. It's not like you can. Continue to do that next year or in the following year. But a lot of people, they want to know exactly where everyone's at on that. That's where I'm at with it. Right now.
And I think that you made a good point. Like, you can still, like, there is still a possibility that they can make the tournament, right? They have to get super hot, but regardless, they can still make the tournament in the regular season. Again, probably not likely, but they're still it's still there, right? And then you never know with the Big Ten tournament run, crazier things have happened. The Big Line team who beat Indiana and all of that in the tournament, crazier things have happened. So, and we know this, we know that their players have been evaluated to be talented enough to do that. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get a clean bill of health, and if they can find a rhythm and because here's the thing, it's one of two things. Either this team was misevaluated and they're just simply not good, and that's that, or they've been missing the rhythm. They had a rough start gelling together with replacing, Livers and the guards and all that. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens here if they get a clean bill of health, because if they don't, then we're kind of just going to be left wondering like what could have been had that happened. And I'm imagining our board will probably reply with, "This is the worst team," and that's how it'll go down. So I just think that it's unfair to make a full assessment on them given the situations they've had to deal with over the past month. Granted, a lot of people have had to deal with this situation in college basketball. However, Michigan was finding a way to gel a lot of talented dudes together early on, and it was a long-term play here is what we thought, and then that long-term play gets completely derailed because of what's happened here over the past few weeks.
I mentioned the Den, Wolverine Den. That's part of the Maize and Blue Review posting boards. That's when you join up. I mean, it is a constant evaluation and conversation about what's going on with Michigan. So you like some Michigan basketball talk. It is 24/7 there. Now we're only here just merely talking about a little bit of the highlights and the points. I mean, that thing is going on all the time. That's the great part of it. So we go from basketball to recruiting in this past weekend. There's some things going on and some things to be excited about. Michigan got a commitment. They lost a commitment. They're making some offers. We're still pointing ahead to February 2nd for 2022, maybe adding a player, and then also taking the long view of 23. Right? What's jumping out to you? I mean, it's a lot. We can sit here for hours, and maybe tomorrow night we will. But for now, I mean, what are you looking at? What's front and center for Brandon Justice when it comes to Michigan recruiting?
Well, we're all kind of looking at Andrew Paul, seeing what happens there. 2022 running back out of Texas. The film is great. The film is excellent. Very dynamic playmaker in the open field. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can run the ball out of the backfield really well. Really good at the point of contact. He's able to bounce off contact really well. It's good vision. He's really like elusive. He does not go down. He's breaking tackles regularly. And so that obviously fits Michigan's style. And when Michigan got in with Paul, it was after signing day, after the first signing day. It was also after Devontae Trayanum, who Michigan was after, the running back from Arizona State, decided to go be a linebacker at Ohio State. So Michigan only has 4 scholarship running backs, including its 2022 signee, CJ Stokes, sorry, brain fart. So including its 2022 signee, CJ Stokes, they only have 4 scholarship running backs right now. And so there's a need there. There's an obvious need. And Andrew Paul, not only does he, when he was offered, you're thinking the naked eye is like, okay, they're just offering a flyer running back who's a 3-star. But then you go watch the film and you're like, this kid has legitimate like 5-star upside at the next level, and now you see him being publicized as the nation's most fastest rising prospect, and so there's a ton of schools after him from each conference and from all over the country. And this guy's been Michigan's got competition. I mean, in-state schools, Texas Tech, you got the SEC who's after him now. So it's one of those things where Michigan kind of got in and we were like, okay, well, like realistically, they should have a pretty good shot here. And then now you have a bunch of schools catching up. So with all that in mind, they host Paul this weekend. He was here on Saturday, and his camp's been pretty quiet since. I had talked to Dad a couple of times prior to the visit. Andrew's mostly, I mean, as far as I've been able to experience, really quiet with media. He's really only done like a couple of things that I've read. And Dad was fine, conversationally, but you can tell that they're keeping this whole thing close to the vest and trying their best to make the decision with closed doors in mind, and that's fully fair. So we don't have a true read on what he might be thinking or doing. Michigan feels good about where it's at because they have probably the best situation for him. There's 4 scholarship running backs here. So he's got an opportunity to come in and be a 5th scholarship running back in a class where, yeah, he's probably better than CJ Stokes, I would say. And I'm sure that's not definitive. CJ Stokes' film is also good, but he's probably seeing that as if he's the better running back of the class. And then you think about this on the other side of things. Well, Corum is going to be more than likely going to be gone after next season. And that just leaves Donnie Edwards, who by the time Paul is a sophomore might not be here either, because he'll have played 2 years at that point and will be granted to leave if he'd like to. So, and if he sticks around for a 3rd year, then by the time Paul plays, he's only a redshirt freshman or redshirt sophomore as it is. So it's interesting. And another thing, speaking of redshirts, is Michigan just burned Donovan Edwards' redshirt as he was a running back 3. So, Paul sees an opportunity, obviously, here where he can crack a depth chart or maybe get into the mix of the rotation, given that he only has, well, you think about it. Corum and Edwards are the sure things, right? That 3rd spot's pretty wide open. It's him, or it's Dunlap, or it's Stokes. So I think he has a situation here where he has an opportunity to play early. And the other side of things is typically when that's in question, the program isn't doing very well. Well, Michigan just went to a college football playoff, beat Ohio State, won the Big Ten, so they have a very unique opportunity for him to go to a top flagship program. Now, the big thing here is proximity. It's pretty far from Texas, to say the least. It's much colder, and he got thrown into the Shark Tank this weekend by coming on the coldest weekend so far of the year. So it's interesting to see what happens there. Like I said, the camp, and I'm just being real. I don't want to throw stuff at a wall and hope it sticks for you guys. Hey, truly, like, his camp's been quiet. They haven't said much, and we don't have a huge read on his side of things. Michigan likes where it's at. But again, this is a situation that works out for him, and Michigan feels like it's done and hit their best in the efforts to land him, and they're going to continue to. I think he's the biggest target left in the 2022 cycle, besides Josh Connerly, the tackle from Washington, who is kind of at a standstill. We talked about that last week. It's the same thing as it was last week, to be quite honest with you. So, but yeah, Paul is the big fish right now, and he was the big fish on campus this past weekend.
Yeah, I saw his coach said all of a sudden he became Bo Jackson, and that's what he was talking about. It reminded me of Jimmy Rolder, who didn't have a whole lot of attention, and then you started talking about him. Next thing you know, he was the hottest recruit in the country. And Paul, in October, I was looking at his offers: Texas State, Sam Houston State, and Houston Baptist. I mean, that was it. Then Colorado, then Michigan, and now everybody. Clemson, Notre Dame, Oregon. You mentioned a bunch of them there, and so I mean, talk about a microwave type situation from 0 to 100. The late interest is amazing, and if you're a Michigan fan, it worked out for Rolder. So hopefully that comparison holds.
Yeah, Michigan being early in on the mix there is key. I think that they clearly made themselves a runner in the race and entered the race earlier registration than the others, and that might play a role. I mean, Michigan saw something in him before he kind of quote unquote blew up, right?
Yeah.
And when prospects tend to blow up, it's typically because one certain school finds them and everyone's like, hold on a second, why are they offering that guy? And then they go look, and then it's kind of like a piggyback game at that point. So that's similar to, and I'm sure we'll talk about this now, so this is a good segue. That's similar to Cole Cabana. And he's an all-purpose back, 2023 kid who visited Michigan for, I think, the 5th time since the summer or 4th time since the summer this past weekend, and got an offer out of it. Didn't have one prior. Did have a Michigan State offer, though, Purdue offer. And with those schools, in the race for him, it was thought that he was going to be a Spartan for sure. That was kind of where everything was at. But now Michigan getting involved, and Michigan State now taking another 2022 running back over the weekend in a 4-star whose name escapes me. But regardless, with that in mind, now Cabana seems to be trending towards Michigan. And so that's kind of the situation they're at, is where they got in early on Paul. They need Paul. They have a situation that really works out for Paul. But now Paul's offers are wide and far. So I do fear that Michigan's relationship, though earlier than the others, wasn't much earlier. We're talking 2 or 3 weeks, not 2 or 3 months or however long it was in other cases. So like in Cabana's case, where State was in it for months ahead of Michigan. So it'll be interesting to see how the Paul thing plays out. As far as Cabana goes, I mean, we spoke with him over the weekend and got a recap from him. And he's kind of like in the stage where he's kind of sitting back, taking a look at everything. And then, okay, the landscape of this recruitment kind of changed. How am I going to react to it? But you can tell he's slow playing it. You see situations like Joel Starlings, who you mentioned, where he decommitted for Michigan. He committed fresh off his visit for the Ohio State game. Anytime that happens, you're holding your breath, right? I mean, anytime that happens, you're holding your breath. It's very quick right after. And even though it seems like you're all in, there's still going to be things that happen over the next couple months that are going to make you think. So Starling's backed off of that. So I think it's a good thing to hear Cabana kind of take his time and see where things are at. But altogether, it was a big recruiting weekend, more names as well involved. Obviously, the commitment, Andrew Rappel, the 4-star tight end. We can go over some quotes that he talked about. I know that you read that one, and the Harbaugh comments were probably intriguing for you, or at least made you a little bit happy, I would assume.
Yes. Yeah, as I look out the Peach Mountain studio windows here, this is Argonaut country. As I'm here in Dexter, and I've got 3 or 4 people, friends of mine or relatives with kids in high school. So the Cabana recruitment's they're going to be important. It's important here to Dexter. I mean, you get a kid that can play Division I, and then one that can play at Michigan. Everybody's fired up. The first guy I talked with, he was playing it like. The kid's super fast. He's awesome. I don't know if he'll be a running back. He can play. You catch the ball out of. He's been to all the games. Super big Dexter fan, but he didn't want to make any commitments. Didn't want to make any calls either way. The next guy, that's all he wanted to do is make calls. My money's on Michigan State. Kid grew up Michigan State fan. His teammates headed to Michigan State, but you know what? What you had to say there about Michigan State picking up a running back, that does seem to change some things. So I'll be on top. I don't know if I'll be on top. I won't. It would be nice to be able to break some news in front of you guys or along with you guys. But around here we're watching the Cabana recruitment with wide eyes. Everybody's interested in what's going on there. So excitement. We can sit around all day. One last thing, Starling's the decommit. He did it right after the Ohio State game, and Sean Newell was here, and that seemed to be the reasoning that his position coach, his recruiter, ended up going to USC. In situations like this, is it unusual for the player that decommits will come back and circle around and commit, or do you think that Michigan's moving on here? Do you have a read on Starlings?
I mean, I think that it's not unusual to see a kid back off his commitment because of a position coach leaving. And then furthermore, it's not unusual to see that turn into the player committing to the school where that coach went, nor is it completely, uncommon for them to circle back and end up at Michigan anyway, or any school that he was previously committed to. And so in his case, I think in Starling's case, I think that now he steps back, takes a bigger lens and looks at things a little bit differently, and probably takes it down to I would assume he probably takes it into summer at least, unless he's quickly amending that relationship with Nua, who's now at USC. But also another name to watch here is Courtney Morgan, who's at Washington now. I don't know if Washington's capable of pulling a kid like Starling's in right now, so I don't know if I'd call them a contender. I just know that Starling's main relationships here at Michigan were with Nua and Morgan, and namely Morgan. And with that in mind, you have to create a whole new relationship, right? Like, yes, he committed to Michigan, he committed to the program. Jim Harbaugh is Jim Harbaugh. All those things are true. But when you lose your two main contacts who you talk to, every day, and two big reasons why you decided to commit to Michigan when you did, not just the win over Ohio State, but the relationships you had built, now you kind of have to hit reset. Do you really want to stay committed with that? I mean, think about it like this. Like, what if your girlfriend just completely changed the personality trait? Like, are you gonna stay with her? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't really compare it with a one-on-one relationship. But if you just like suddenly didn't have the two things that you liked most about it, and like it was those two things were just gone, like of course you're gonna take a step back and be like, okay, need to reevaluate a little bit. So I think that's where he's at. I don't know if this still goes on for Michigan. I don't know if they're still gonna want to be involved. It seems like they will. But they probably don't love the decommitment and the reasoning and all of that, because it depends on what Mike Elston likes. Now it's going to be up to him to kind of evaluate Starlings and decide, like, okay, is this going to be a kid that we want to put eggs in baskets for? And so I think that evaluation is TBD, and when it's done, Michigan will make its move or not.
Staying with the girlfriend comparison, get the time on this. So I can write that down to everybody. You mentioned the Den. They like to know exactly, what's coming up next. And what's coming up next, if I use that girlfriend comparison and Jim Harbaugh and what's going on with his situation, he went to the dance last year and nobody was asking him, and he was there. And, he didn't have a good time, and, he left with his friends. Now he's, he's rolling in a brand new car. He's lost weight. He looks like $1 million. All the girls want him. And so he's going to walk in and he's going to have his fun. He's going to see what it's like, to walk in with the music playing and everything else. I think that is what's happening here with the NFL. But, it's day 17, Brandon. So until there's an announcement, there is going to be speculation. And when anything happens with the Chicago Bears or the Las Vegas Raiders, there's going to be a lot more speculation. And last night, I don't have to tell you, but the Raiders fired their general manager and Mike Mayock. So immediately that, sent everybody to their keyboards and the rumors start flying. So, that's where we're at, right now in day 17. I mean, how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I think that my sentiment's going to echo the one I've had all along. I think that Jim Harbaugh, first and foremost, his character is polarizing sometimes, I suppose, but it's pretty consistent, right? I would say Harbaugh really, has he evolved? Yeah. But I mean, he's evolved in how he answers questions to the media differently. Like, he's a little bit more understanding, I guess, of their questioning. He changed things with his culture within the university, as far as the team and the energy they bring and how they handle game days. A little bit, not so much less business-like, but he's allowing some more energy, right? We saw that with the jump around and the chairs, and the list goes on. But
he let him start playing music at the spring game or spring practices, and they didn't let that go on at all. And a lot of the players pointed to that as the energy that like that was the buzzword. What was different this year? The energy. A lot of them pointed to spring and allowing music, or sometimes it's small things like that.
Yeah, and it is. And it sounds silly to say this, what I'm about to say, but you would think that Jim Harbaugh, knowing Jim Harbaugh as much as we do by now, and being around him as much as we have been, and hearing the things he's had to say, and, just based on his history, like, he's a guy where you just don't expect him to do the things he's been doing so far these past couple weeks and then be gone. Because not only is that a Jim Harbaugh thing, but that's an anybody thing. Who goes and hires a defensive line coach as good as Mike Elston? And who goes to basketball games to recruit as much as he has been? He's going to be at Luke Montgomery's game on Friday. Acuna's making his daily appearance, by the way. Who goes to that many games, and who recruits the way he's been recruiting and has been as busy on the trail as he has, with plans to exit? And I know that Brian Kelly did some things. And I know that there's been other coaches prior. This wouldn't be the first time a coach screwed people over. I get that. Trust me, by all means. But at the same time, it's like how many times have people said, "Oh, Jim Harbaugh is just like a totally different person for good or bad reasons," right? Like how many times have they said Jim Harbaugh is like the most unique individual for good or bad reasons, right? I think there's something unique about him in situations like this where he's not the guy to screw Michigan over. He's not the guy to say what he's said to recruits and then screw them over. If he does, then I'll eat a hat by all means. But the tea leaves here, the recruiting, the efforts in recruiting, the like how pressed he was to get Mike Elston to Ann Arbor. Josh Henschke mentioned on our board the other day how quickly that developed. So how much he prioritized bringing Elston to Ann Arbor as soon as Nua left, and then how he's recruited and the effort he's put into recruiting, how much he's been on the trail. Not to mention, I think Rappel, the new commitment, the 2023 tight end, makes a pretty good point. He said his theory was that he's just trying to bring more attention to this whole situation so that he can bring more money to the program, because like we talked about, and I'm sure you've talked about it when I wasn't on the show as well, but like we talked about last week, like a big part of this deal is not just Harbaugh's salary, it's the assistants' salaries, it's the NIL, it's how they can prioritize these things and come up with reasons and strategies to make them players in the recruiting game with NIL involved. And then lastly, and this is the last point I'll make about the situation in this sentence because I've been rambled, but the last point I'll make is Mark Schlissel just got fired. And that's like the worst kept secret, is that those two didn't really particularly get along.
No.
And that Schlissel didn't exactly help out the football program as best as the president should, right? And he's gone. So you're going to tell me that Jim Harbaugh is going to beat Ohio State, slay the beast, win the Big Ten, return an entire offense, like everyone besides Hassan Haskins and Andrew Stuber, return everyone, and Dalen Baldwin, I guess. And then he's just going to skip out? Don't get me wrong. Coaches are crazy. Brian Kelly left, and he had a lot coming back, and he had more years at Notre Dame than Jim Harbaugh does at Michigan. However, we know Harbaugh, and how many times we've said how much of an individual he is and how different he is and yada, yada, yada. Are we just going to forget about that now? Like that's just where I'm at with it. The San Francisco thing, he left San Francisco. Why? He's getting pushed out by ownership. And then Michigan came along, and it was perfect timing. It was like this perfect little getaway for both of them, for Michigan to hire him and for Harbaugh to get away from it. That's where I'm at. And we can't compare him leaving Stanford for San Francisco to Michigan. That's my synopsis of the situation. And also my cat's going nuts. So sorry for my consistent.
All right. I like that. I like Acuna. If it's about power and money, I don't think that any of these pro teams, I mean, you can make a case they can go above that, but I think, the control that he has, you mentioned the president, control and money, it's pretty comparable, if not, better situation at Michigan. I look to those two things and his family and, where his kids go to school, where his parents live on the same block. I mean, all those kind of things. I do look at, but I wanted to follow up one thing. I'll make this fun. I talk about this all the time. I can sit here and ask you a million questions. It's one of those things, but you mentioned it twice that, he wouldn't screw him over. He wouldn't screw him over. In your mind, if Jim Harbaugh did leave to go coach the Raiders, do you think that would be screwing over Michigan?
I mean, not necessarily in principle, like leaving Michigan for an NFL job isn't screwing over Michigan. That's just, I always encourage everyone to do what they feel is best, like what they want to do. So by all means, like he's not tied to this university. When you elect to take a job, you don't sign your life away. So no, I don't think that the principle of it is the problem. I think it's just his consistency to not even bring this up to other staff. Like, hasn't even, as far as we know, there hasn't even been a conversation with anyone within Shem that's like, hey, there's a chance I do, and if I do, here's what we should do. Is just like that hasn't even been brought up. So to not bring it up so far, and to operate business like usual, to go and hire Mike Elston, to take commitments in this class, to continue to recruit 2022s like Connerly and Paul, that would be the part that is tricky, I think. And if you're going to leave, you have to kind of cross your T's and dot your I's on your way out, or you're probably going to be forgotten about around here for good reason, or just, have a pool of disdain for it. So I think it's like I said, it's not I'm leaving that's screwing them over. It's the way he's gone about everything he's done so far since the rumors and then going, right? The rumors aren't his responsibility. So it's not his responsibility to clear them up because he didn't create them. However, the questions that we have, I'm sure folks inside Schembechler have, right? And I'm sure they've been asked. And nobody's been worried enough to go anywhere or do anything or say anything. And if you look at every single detail of this situation on any site, I don't care where you read it, it's for the most part, if it's negative, if it's saying, oh, yeah, he's thinking about it, it's speculation, in my opinion. Because the only people who know that we know would be his inner circle. And his inner circle has never talked, ever. Not when he took the job, not when he theoretically might leave the job. So
I'm getting my news from the Maize and Blue Review, so
as you should.
I don't know about those other sites and what they're
As you
saying.
should.
I do know last year, that it went into the signing day, and I thought that all hell was going to break loose, and it was going to be terrible, but it wasn't. There was none of that happened. So, I just remember how I felt last year. I mean, this is ridiculous. He was holding Michigan hostage over money or left, and that could have been the case, but it didn't hurt Michigan seemingly in recruiting. They lost a couple, they gained a couple, and the way it's going right now, if he comes back, I mean, that's the part about, like, if anybody was like, don't be making up rumors of Jim Harbaugh, or why is everybody talking about Jim Harbaugh? Jim Harbaugh could end it, though. I mean, like, of course they're going to talk about it. Of course they're going to talk about the Raiders. Like, if they get down to Chicago and there's something about, they ended up talking to Jim Harbaugh. Well, people are going to go crazy. I mean, that's going to happen right now. The more this, plays on or goes and plays out. So there it is. Any final thought on that, on Harbaugh here?
People who have the university on their checks would be more surprised than the people watching this. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. If he's going to shock you guys, he's also shocking everyone that he pseudo employs right now. So we'll put it that way.
We don't want to shock the world type situation right now.
No, everything's going well around here football wise. Let's keep it that way.
I don't put it in a shock the world type situation with what Matt Stafford and the Rams did last night to the Cards. But what it was interesting, they beat them 34-11, and there hasn't been a 34-11 score that was quite as surprising since New Year's Eve when Michigan played Georgia. The exact same score last night with the Rams beating the Cardinals as Michigan losing to Georgia here. How happy are you for Matt Stafford that he got that monkey off his back and has a playoff win?
I am very happy that he decided to stop scoring because the under on sharpening the edge stayed alive, which is great. But no, I mean, Stafford's just he's a staple. He's a Detroit staple, I think, forever. I think we'll always remember that guy for what he did for the Lions and his efforts here and his play and what he did for the community and his personality. And I know his wife has kind of gotten a little bit different with her age, I suppose would be the word. She just caught herself in some things like throwing stuff at people and all that. But when she was here and when they were here, it was she was pretty universally liked for the most part. And so I mean, the family was awesome here, and it's really about like what you do in the community, not just what you do in the field. And he was awesome with that as well. I actually met him once. It was very ironic. I was in Traverse City. I think I was like 16, and I was walking. This was like 2012, 13, somewhere in there. And I was walking downtown Traverse City and walked past a group of guys, my buddy and I did, and we saw what looked like Matthew Stafford. Now, granted, he was wearing a plaid shorts with striped top. So I was like, nah, no way a millionaire dresses like that. Turns out it definitely was Matthew Stafford because we turned around to go double check and he actually opened the door for us. And I was like, oh my God, thank you for opening the door, Matthew Stafford. I appreciate it. And then asked him to take a picture and the whole nine. So he's just, quality, genuine guy. Like I find it really hard for people to not root for Matthew Stafford. Now I know there's people who are just self-loathing, like bitter, like hate having fun with life and are just going to consistently like root against him because he didn't do this or didn't do that or whatever. And everyone loves him. So that just means they got to hate him type of deal. And so by all means, do your thing. But I, for one, am definitely on the side of always rooting for that guy. He never did anything in Detroit that I disliked. I mean, the dude, what happened with that Browns game? Like a broken collarbone. I mean, come on. Like, I'm always rooting for Stafford. Super happy for him. I hope they take this thing all the way, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, he was. You mentioned that stuff off the field. In 2012, he was down at the Glick Field House at a big charity, a Night of Champions. He was there, and his girlfriend at the time, Kelly. He did great things in the community. People miss the point a lot, like act like this guy's never going to be able to win a playoff game. If they watched him back in 2011 when he threw 5,000 yards and they played the Saints, Stafford was awesome in that game.
Mhm.
Calvin Johnson had over 200 yards. Stafford ran in and flipped the ball. He was really good. And the Lions had a NFC Championship offense that year. Their defense sucked. And the Saints never punted in that game. That was the reason they didn't win a playoff game. So anybody was like, you can never win a playoff game with Matt Stafford, like, well, you don't really know what you're talking about.
No.
Come on. Now, the Rams didn't give up 2 picks, 3 picks, whatever they gave up, 2 number ones, and another pick for Stafford to have him win a wild card game. Jared Goff won a wild card game last year. They got him to deal with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Likely the next, for sure, Brady, and then after that, probably Rodgers. That's where they got him. So if he wants to, kick it up a notch and show people that, oh yeah, I can be an elite quarterback. Well, the next 2 wins would go a heck of a long way in doing that. That's how I look at it. And I don't think that he's going to beat Tampa Bay. I know they did earlier this year, but and I know Brady, they've lost a lot. They didn't have Fournette. They didn't have anything, barely. And they still just rolled over the Eagles. But that's going to be a horse of a different color coming up for Stafford this week and then the following week.
I think the Rams are going to win. I think Stafford's got a special kind of motivation this year, and I think that when you have a quarterback you want to play for, you're a very dangerous team, and the Buccaneers certainly have that. I mean, Tom Brady. Who the hell doesn't want to play for Tom Brady? But I think this means a lot to Stafford, right? This is to prove himself. Like, yes, he is doing this for the Rams, and he's doing this for the organization. I'm sure that he's a organizational guy. We saw that when he was here. If you can play for the Lions because you love the Lions, you can play anywhere, right? So with that in mind, I think Stafford also has a little bit of something to prove himself, right? He wants to prove to himself he can do this and to his fans. And I think that there is a part of him that still wants to kind of look back and, Detroit has something to cheer for with him at quarterback. And I think he knows that too. But outside of that, I mean, the Rams defense is just super strong. I mean, Aaron Donald in the center, Jalen Ramsey in the backfield. I think that they have everything it takes to shut down a Tom Brady led offense. Fournette, I don't know if Fournette's playing or not, but they don't have like this, world wrecking running back. I think Jalen Ramsey is going to be able to contain Mike Evans. Chris Godwin's out. We obviously Antonio Brown is wherever he is. So I think that. Oh God, that's a separate podcast. So yeah, I mean, I personally, I have the Rams. I'm going to obviously, like I do every week, I'm going to see what happens with the line with Vegas, and that'll be my true prediction. But up here I'm thinking the Rams, and also in my heart. So I should say that too.
Sharpening the edge preview here on a Tuesday. That is awesome. Here's a little memorabilia minute for you. It's a Barry Sanders game day program. And the interesting thing about this, if you get really close and look, Lions and Jets, it might not mean anything to you, but if you kind of take a look at that date, it's 97 at the Pontiac Silverdome. This was the day that Barry went over 2,000 yards in a very famous, some say infamous game because of an injury in the first half to their linebacker. But here's that game day program. What you don't want to do if you get something collectible like this is get a big coffee stain on it like I have there. If I ever went to, try to
personal collection.
It is a personal collection, which is most of my things. Luckily, I have another 1 or 2 that are preserved down in the real memorabilia treasure trove chest. But
there you go
for you. All right, Brandon. I know you got you're using your Google Calendar charts and getting everything arranged. For the war room, TMBR war room. One time you're gonna have to show us all that behind the scenes look and everything. But we always appreciate your knowledge and thanks for joining us here. And we look forward to talking with you. I think we're gonna do some recruiting things tomorrow night, so I can't wait.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys having me. And as always, look forward to next time.
There he is, Brandon Justice. Go Blue.